Todd Ladiolas. I'm the Prevention and Policy Administrator on Governor Abbott's Child Sex Trafficking team. I want to thank you so much for joining us for the July installment of our monthly webinar series. Before I introduce our speaker for this month, I want to just run through a few quick housekeeping logistical things for those of you joining us today. First of all, yes, you all are muted right now, so don't worry about your background noise or anything going on there. You have been muted by the administrator. If you need to unmute yourself, if we get to the question and answer portion and your question is too difficult to make sense via text in the chat box, you'll have an option there to let us know and we can unmute you to be able to ask your question that way. I also wanted to let you know that if you have any difficulty with the sound or hearing us today, it may be a bandwidth issue on your computer. We find that it's sometimes more helpful if you just use the phone-in option. So you can select that call-in option there and it'll give you a number and a PIN code to type in to join us using your phone instead of the computer audio. As I mentioned, we will have time for some questions. You should have a question box there that you can type in your questions. Please feel free to do that as we go. We'll be monitoring the questions. If it makes sense to answer it as we're presenting, we'll take those questions then. Otherwise, we'll reserve some time at the very end for your questions. And finally, we do have permission from our speaker to record today's webinar, as well as make the presentation materials available to you all. So following today's webinar, once we get everything converted, we'll have a link where you can share the recording of this webinar with colleagues who couldn't join us. And you'll also have access to a PDF of the PowerPoint. So with all of that housekeeping out of the way, I want to introduce you all to Mary Christine Reed. She's with the Texas Foster Youth Justice Project, and she's going to be talking to us today about legal services available to vulnerable youth, including sexually exploited youth and those youth who have aged out of the foster care system. Mary Christine, we are so thankful to you for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Hello, welcome to everyone. A few of my my team members are also attending the webinar. We appreciate you giving them the opportunity to hear this training. We have been unable to do in-person trainings for several months now, so this was a good opportunity for them to get to see it as best they can. The Texas Foster Youth Justice Project is part of Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, which is one of the legal aid organizations in Texas. TRALA, Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, covers about a third of the state of Texas, but our program, the Foster Youth Program, is a statewide program. And we assist current and former foster youth with legal problems. We also assist using young adults who, I get probably that phrase, vulnerable, who are vulnerable. I put here without family support with legal problems that are often of a similar nature to those youth that were in foster care. And we provide guidance for those that work with current and former foster youth about legal issues and their rights. We have a toll-free number that youth or anybody working with a youth can call. We have an email address, info@texasfosteryouth.org. That is the best email address to contact our project. There are several of us at the project, and then that way whoever is available at that time can get back to you more quickly. And we have a website with a lot of information. As I said, we have several people on our team. I'm the project director. We have 3 attorneys and our legal assistant, Lulu Portillo. We also have, I realize that we have neglected to put her name, another legal assistant, Karen Gilbert, that works with us, and Karen is on the call today. We work together. We obviously we're in some different offices, but like all of Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, we work together across the offices, and as I said, we do things on a statewide basis. So we've done stuff up in the Panhandle, we've done a lot of work in Dallas and Houston over the years. We have a web page that has tons of resources. If you go into it, and like, for example, we're going to be talking about the Foster Youth Medicaid program. There are several documents on that webpage that you can find about the Medicaid and health insurance for former foster youth, from a flyer that you can give the youth to sort of some in-depth questions and answers to try to resolve some of the problems that they have with that. And that's similar for a lot of the other resources. It also has a lot of content, just in general information about foster youth. And so I encourage you in the future, if you're working with someone you think was in foster care, or we also do have some additional resources that are pertinent as well to what we refer to as vulnerable youth, for some of the common issues that they share with foster youth related to like criminal records and identification documents and things like that. And so our webpage is a great place to start to look for some assistance. Some of the common project cases we work on, there's obviously a big range of cases that I kind of refer to it as about foster youth rights and about the successful transition to independence. And that's where the vulnerable youth come in. They often have some of the same issues, some of the same barriers and stuff emerging from adolescence into adulthood without critical identification documents, with criminal records, and issues that just things that maybe seem small but just keep them from ever getting established as an adult and functioning. And that's the kind of areas that we work on. We have no age limit. I have several clients that are in their 40s or 50s that have issues that are sort of left over from that time that they were in foster care, either getting their CPS records, stuff related to immigration documents, sorting out what their immigration citizenship status is. So that there's no limit. I mean, if the issue seems to be connected to their time in foster care. Obviously, if we have like a young adult who's in their late 20s, so no longer quite so young, and has an issue with a mortgage, that's probably outside the realm of what our project focuses on. It might be another legal aid attorney practice area issue, but that, our project focuses more on those issues as the transition to adulthood, or matters left over from their time in foster care. So the first thing that comes up a lot is if you may be working with a youth who thinks that maybe they were in foster care at some point, isn't really sure, you're not sure if they aged out of foster care, and that you're wondering if there's perhaps some benefits that resources they're entitled to. They may have been involved, CPS may have been involved and may have been placed with a relative, and so they're uncertain if they think that they were in foster care because CPS was involved, but it's not clear. And so that's one thing, is you can contact the state offices at DFPS to find out. You can ask them to verify if that youth was ever in care. And by care, I mean actually there was a court order issued giving the department at least temporary managing conservatorship over them. The CPS just did an investigation, and then there was a safety plan done, or an agreement reached to have the child go stay with a relative or family friend, then it wouldn't have come to the point where they were entered into the conservatorship. If you have a youth is in care, that they aged out, and you're just trying to help them connect to the services, here is also some of the contact information that you can use to try to get them connected with those services. You can also contact us. We can help facilitate that. We can also, if they have more complicated issues, that you can go ahead and just contact us straight off. We also can contact the DFPS and find out, ascertain what what their status was if they were in foster care, and help advise the youth about what they would be entitled to, and try to connect them to those services. For youth who are in foster care, there are rights. It's on the DFPS webpage. And if you are working with a youth who is in care, including young adults, this is a good document to review with them. Quite often they will say, wait, I don't have that right. I'm not getting to do that. And that's certainly something they can contact us about if they want help enforcing that right, or they can advocate for themselves. They can also contact the foster care ombudsman, which covers youth who are under the age of 18 in foster care. It's housed in the Health and Human Services Commission, so it's not part of DFPS. And I have found them to be a pretty effective agency. They have to do reports every year and about the kind of issues that youth are experiencing. They are pretty aggressive about pursuing the complaints. They're not dismissive. They do refer youth to us when they feel like an issue has not been successfully resolved, or that satisfactorily resolved. So that's a way that a youth in care, one way that they can address their issues. A critical resource, if you're really trying to get more detail about what should be happening in foster care with an older youth, a young adult, is the CPS handbook. There's a section 10,000 about the right, the children in foster care, and this picture is of a different section, but it has a lot of information about a lot of what we're talking about today, about the benefits, resources, extended foster care, and things like that. And so that's a great place if you are really getting into the nitty-gritty with somebody about what might be available, or or if it seems like things aren't being handled correctly, it's a good place you can look. So an issue that we work with very frequently with both foster youth and other vulnerable youth is identification issues. So basically, to function in our society as an adult, I mean, to get a job, get public benefits, to vote, rent an apartment, open a bank account, fly on an airplane, just the list of things that people need ID to accomplish. There's always something new coming up, some barrier. I have a client who doesn't have ID, is encountering, is they need to have identification documents. And so every person should have a original certified birth certificate. So not a photocopy. I continue to be amazed at the number of CPS caseworkers that tell me that a youth has a birth certificate, and so then I ask, is it a photocopy or is it a certified copy? And they tell me it's a photocopy. They will not take your photocopy at DPS to issue a license. They should have a Texas photo identification card, or when they had the proper training and things of that nature, a driver's license. They should have the Social Security card, again, the actual card, not a photocopy. And if were not born in the United States, they need a copy of their original immigration document, which could include a certificate of citizenship if they became a citizen at one point. For example, children who've been adopted from a foreign country may have become a citizen, depending on the circumstances. They may have become a citizen upon as soon as they entered the United States, but they need to have that certificate of citizenship to show that they are a citizen, or that they are legally authorized in the United States and they have the ability to work and for public benefits and Social Security. So youth in foster care, DFPS has requirements that they be getting these documents. Unfortunately, it often doesn't happen. We know with homeless youth, unaccompanied youth, and youth who come from vulnerable backgrounds, that this is also a huge issue with them. We get a lot of youth who contact our project who are like estranged from their family. They maybe were they were adopted out of foster care, but they're no longer with their adoptive family that really have barriers to this issue. So this is just an ongoing issue for youth. And unfortunately, the laws about getting these documents tend to get more complicated and have more stringent requirements every year. But there was a very hopeful development. And there's a new law that was passed, I guess it was the last legislative session, which was just in 2019. It seems so long ago. That allows for homeless youth and children in foster care and young adults in extended foster care can go and get their birth certificate from the state office here in Austin, or any entity that issues the birth certificates without fee, and if they're under 18, without parent consent. So that's a huge thing, that is that the birth certificate is going to be a critical document to getting all the other documents. And not having to pay the fee is important, but not having to have parent consent when you're working with with somebody who is not in good relations with their parents, or does not have any family support or access to their parents, is also very important. There is detailed information about this, about the birth certificate and the also the Texas ID card on our webpage under the identification documents section. And I have to say that the Texas Department of State Health Services Vital Statistics Session has done a wonderful job of putting out information on their webpage and sending information to the local sites. The local sites sometimes are not as familiar with it as they should be, but we've gotten a lot of support when people have encountered barriers. There's also a provision in the law that makes it simpler for foster youth and homeless unaccompanied youth to request their DPS identification card without a fee, and more importantly, it limits what they have to do to prove their Texas residency, which often means they have to have a couple additional documents, which youth and young adults often don't have, like bank account statements and leases that show their address and name and address. There's special provisions for foster youth and forms, and that is being finalized as we speak by DFPS. But for the homeless youth, there's a certification form. They have to be certified, basically meeting the federal McKinney-Vento status, and by a school, shelter, or transitional living or housing program. And that can be with the school. It could be somebody who is over the age of 18, but is still enrolled in public school. So there's more information on our webpage about those resources. And for youth in foster care, extended foster care, they can use the address of the regional CPS office. And since they move frequently, that's a good way for them to actually, have a consistent address on that document. And the caseworker can then receive the ID card, and then any notices they get, for example, about tickets, and forward them to them. We see a lot of issues related to this with names. Somebody who was adopted, but they what's called failed adoption, and the adoptive parents never completed all the paperwork to get the Social Security card updated or the birth certificate updated. There's an incorrect name on the birth certificate. Sometimes there's some random last name of somebody the mother was seeing at that time, and then the mother wasn't seeing them anymore, and they started using another name, but the old name is still on the birth certificate. There is frequently we have seen names where the parent didn't give them a name before the hospital completed the paperwork, and so they went ahead and listed them as infant as their first name and the last name of their mother. And that obviously is a little bit challenging to get your Social Security card copy of your social security card and your ID when you have that name. Sometimes various variations have used them during their life, and things get very complicated. These issues are much easier to address before age 18. So if you're working with a youth who's involved with the court, let the court know that there's an issue. But certainly it's something our project can help with. We've done a lot of name changes or name corrections, clarifications to assist youth with this, because it's often the only way we're going to be able to help them get ID documents as well. And in the long run, if they don't fix it, it's going to continue to cause problems, with also all the standard things that they need ID for. Just briefly, there's a lot of special legal various laws that provide benefits or access to special services for foster youth, and many of them are also available for homeless, unaccompanied youth, or other youth that are considered disadvantaged. And so if you are working with a youth who is encountering issues of some of these natures, and you want to know if there's some way that some law that you can point to, or advocacy that the youth needs by a lawyer to help them get those rights, certainly we can you can contact us and we can look into exactly what might apply. For those youth who are in foster care, there are foster care liaisons at every school district. There's regional education specialists at DFPS that are wonderful. They are really helpful at resolving educational issues and helping youth, get that high school diploma completed and connecting them to the resources at the school, getting them enrolled quickly. There are also higher education foster care liaisons at every, supposed to be one at every publicly funded college in Texas. And so these are can be really critical people when you have somebody, even if it's somebody who is 24, but has a tuition waiver, which we're going to talk about in a minute, really helping them navigate the whole college process and connect to the correct resources and just deal with some of the small things that tend to come up and really set our youth and young adults off on the wrong track, where they're not finishing the school year. For homeless and unaccompanied youth, there's a Texas Education for Homeless Children and Youth Support Center, which has various resources. There's also a homeless liaison for every school district. This is a new office, replaced another office with the Texas Homeless Education Office. And so they've not been as responsive as the former organization was, but there are resources there. And certainly if you're encountering issues, you can contact us. For example, if somebody's being told they can't enroll because they need to have their parent enroll them and their parents not involved and not there, you can contact our project and we can help you and help that youth get enrolled in school quickly. There's DFPS is a program called Preparation for Adult Living. It covers youth and those who have aged out of foster care and older youth in extended foster care. They do various services, particularly transition planning and a life skills class that helps give youth an introduction to some of the skills that they will need. Obviously, they're going to continue to need reinforcement and help with those things, but they at least have 32 hours covering the initial material. One of the very helpful things that they have available is after someone has left foster care, and even often while they're in extended foster care, they can get help from aftercare case managers. This is something that's voluntary. It's available. The youth is not required to work with them, but when they start realizing the difficulties in obtaining housing, about finding a job, about getting enrolled in college, they can be very helpful. We have a link to the regional case management service providers They help with things such as education, housing, employment, job training, public benefits. These are entities are not part of CPS. They are nonprofit entities that contract with the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services to provide those services. So here in Austin, the agency that does it is LifeWorks. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's the TRAC Center, the Transition Resource Action Center, which is part of one city. There's a different nonprofit in each area that contracts with them. They also, many of them, especially all those in the urban areas, have what's called a transition center, which is where several of the case managers are based. They tend to have some computers, and so that's a place youth can go to job search, attend some job training classes, or know that they can go to get help. And so it's an important place for any youth that you're working with who aged out of foster care or while they're still in foster care, to know that it's there and that they can go there to try to get help and connect with those resources when they realize it's a lot harder to do on their own than they thought. And again, it's voluntary, and it's up to them. They're going to have certain responsibilities with meeting with the case manager and doing a budget and stuff to access some of the funds and support services, but it's a great resource. This part of the presentation, extended jurisdiction and care, I'm just going to go over very quickly. There's some of these slides I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, just because we only have an hour, and but I wanted you to have the information available to you to look back to it afterwards if you had more particular questions. So basically, when somebody is 18, the court no longer has control over them if they're in foster care. They are free to leave foster care, although I recommend that they make a planned departure if they're going to leave. But they also can stay in the current placement they're at unless that placement has notified them and CPS they no longer want them to be there. And they can the court can continue to oversee, as long as they are in extended foster care, stay in extended foster care, the court continues to oversee their case, not because they're telling them what to do and have control over that youth, but to make sure they're getting the services and support they need to transition to adulthood. And so the youth can also, even if they leave extended foster care, can request that the court be able to continue to hold hearings. So when I'm working with a youth that has, I feel like that they still need a lot of support from the department. There's unresolved issues. We're still working on ID documents. They have siblings who are in care they're having trouble accessing. There's things that we really need to go back to the court to make sure that CPS and the aftercare programs and the PAL program are providing. We make file a request that the court continue to have jurisdiction. So if you're talking to a youth, they should not be afraid or be concerned, that because the court keeps jurisdiction, that means they don't want to be in foster care anymore after they're 18, because there's still court hearings, because that they can stay in extended foster care, and they have more autonomy and control than they did before they're 18. Of course, if you stay in extended foster care, you have some rules and things you need to follow. Once you're over the age of 18, the youth must meet one of the criteria, and these criteria are going to keep coming up with various benefits. But they must be attending college or a higher learning institution or post-secondary vocational program or technical program. Or they can participate in an employment program or activity that promotes or removes barriers to employment. They can be actively looking for jobs and documenting that. They have to work at a job at least 80 hours per month, or they have a documented medical condition that limits other activities. So if they are an SSI, then they meet that requirement for the documented medical condition. Somebody can have a temporary a temporary medical condition. For example, they're at the very end of a pregnancy, or they're in the postpartum period, that then they would be exempt from this for a period of time. So if a youth leaves extended foster care, when they can ask to come back at any point until they're up to age 21. So the biggest barrier often is the lack of a placement that will take them, or a placement that the youth is satisfied with. But the youth does have the right to ask to be requested, and CPS has to make an effort to try to find a placement for that youth. You should contact the youth PAL worker if you're having trouble figuring out how to do that, or if you have a youth that is really desperate, that they can contact us and we can try to coordinate. And I have to tell you, this is not something that usually happens overnight. It can take several weeks, so they just can't realize I'm homeless and I want a place and I need it, and they're not going to get one the next day. But the program is designed for, there should be recognition that youth often leave care because they've had it with CPS, and then they realize it really is challenging to do it on their own, and they may try to seek to come back into care. Now, one of the best things available for those youth who are in extended foster care is supervised independent living. So it's a program, and it varies depending on the program. There's multiple organizations and entities that provide a SIL type placement, but it allows young adults to live on their own while they receive some case management and support services. So there are youth who are in the college dorm just like anybody else at several colleges in Texas. There are youth in apartments on their own. There are youth in a house with two other foster youth. There are youth in like a sort of like private dorm program. So there's a wide range of options. There's a DFPS website that kind of lists the various things. And so the youth has to apply for it, and the burden to get in this program is a little bit higher than just to return to extended foster care, because the youth has to establish that they can live on their, not have that they're going to be able to do okay without 24-hour supervision with, somebody who's just checking in on them once a week and helping them, navigate some of the things that come up, but that they're going to have to be responsible for preparing their own food and doing their laundry and making sure they get up to go to work and things like that. But I have had youth that really struggled in foster care who have been successful in supervised independent living. So it's something I really encourage youth to consider, especially even those that have left foster care swearing they're never going to go back into that. It's a very different type placement. Of course, they have to be responsible and meet the requirements and not break the rule, the basic rules that they have. The program basically will pay for all of the housing expenses. So it's going to pay for whatever building they're in, the utilities, and it gives them a stipend that they use to help pay for their food and their clothing and other personal needs. They can get a job, they can go to school. If they get a job and earn any money, they get to keep all that money and spend it for their groceries and whatever else they want. So they're not going to get rich, but they don't have to worry about they're going to get evicted.
Mary Christine, we actually had a question come in about the supervised independent living, and that was whether or not aged out youth who happen to have a child themselves are eligible for supervised independent living, and where to find if that program is in their area. This person was admitted specifically.
Yes, there are some of the programs do allow for it. if so, I know in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, ACH they place the youth in a variety of options, and some of those have, they'd be, in an apartment by themselves, so they could be in an apartment with their child. There is some programs in the Austin area as well, and so that's, I guess if the person wants to email me, I will be happy to talk to them some more about what programs might fit under that. So it is possible for some of the programs, and it is possible. This may not be ideal for the youth, but if somebody is in one part of the state and if they're open to moving to another part of the state to get into an SIL program, that's available. If the SIL program accepts them and has a placement available. And so I have had youth that have moved to different parts of the states because they want to get into that SIL, they want to be in that SIL program. Now if somebody wants to stay where they're at, it's going to limit their options. So I'm going to give an overview of the various transitional services and benefits available to foster youth. Many of these are only available to people who've aged out of care, but we'll discuss the ones that might be available to youth who did not age out of care as well. So there's Medicaid until age 26. This is one of the best benefits in my mind for somebody who aged out of foster care, is that they are entitled to get Medicaid until the age of 26, so the former foster care children's Medicaid program. So just like somebody, your child, young adult stays on your health insurance until they turn 26, which is it's a great resource, especially for youth in foster care who often have extensive medical conditions, mental health care, and other needs, and this really helps them have some continuity in that care. As I said, there's a lot of information on our website about it. It also includes so you have to have been in the conservatorship of DFPS when you turned 18, and it also covers unaccompanied refugee minor resettlement program youth, which this came under the Affordable Care Act, and it was required under the Affordable Care Act. There is no income or test or asset limit, which most of the time the youth would, under old programs, wasn't really a barrier, but it means that they don't have to fill out a lot of burdensome paperwork about their income and assets. Here are some detailed instructions about how to apply. When they leave foster care, they should be on it, but if they stay on it for a year, but then they're going to get some renewal documentation, which if they've not updated their address, which generally they haven't, and they won't get, and then they don't complete the paperwork, and so they may have to call to get back on. And so I'm not going to go over these instructions, but other than the critical point is when they finally get to a person, they should say, I need to talk to a foster youth specialist about foster youth Medicaid or something like that. They need to talk to someone who actually is familiar with the program, because we have had a lot of issues since the program started several years ago with people not being familiar with the program. It's a small program compared to many of the other Medicaid programs. And at the 211 call center, telling the youth they need to call CPS, or there's no such program, or things like that. So they just have to do it. Now they really need somebody to call with them to really push for this. And even when they do ask for it, sometimes they are told, no, you can't talk to that person. And so if you help someone call and they have this issue, and then they should call us so we can get involved. And so that's just sort of the big takeaway from this. But I would encourage you to try to call with the youth before you contact us, just because it alleviates having to get in contact with us and do an intake and signing representation documents. There's also a program for Medicaid for transitioning foster care youth. This is for youth that aged out of foster care, but because they were not on Medicaid the day before they turned 18, do not qualify to be on the FFCC, which I know sounds ridiculous, but that's just the way it is under the Affordable Care Act. And it's most likely this happens because they were in prison or jail at that time. So this is a population that you all may be working with, and so I wanted you to be aware of that. And again, they can contact us. We've helped several youth get on this. Transitional living allowances and $1,000 benefits to youth that have aged out of foster care. Again, it's the same requirements as those in extended foster care. They have to be in college or high school, and participating in a program and working a job at least 80 hours a month, and have a documented medical condition, or have a documented medical condition to get it. And this is one benefit of this, is this $1,000 is given to the youth. They can do with it whatever they want. There's a transitional living allowance. This is up to a total of $3,000, again, not more than $500 a month. And it's not paid in cash to the youth, but it's used to help pay for rent, utilities, deposits for an apartment, gift cards to a grocery store if they're homeless and they need help with food. It's supposed to be for emergency or stabilizing systems, so this should not be a formal part of their budget, like I'm going to get this apartment, and for the first year, DFS is going to pay $500 a month, and that's how I'm going to meet the rent. It's like to help them first get into that apartment, or to, if they lose their job or are sick and miss some work and they need help making the rent for a month. All these benefits they have to use before they turn 21. Here's the next area we're coming is education benefits. Okay, the tuition waiver is the benefit that may be available to youth who did not age out of foster care, but spent time in the foster care system, or were adopted out of foster care system. It's a wonderful benefit. Sadly, it's not highly utilized just because of all the barriers and lack of educational attainment that we see foster youth encounter. And I think with a lot of youth who maybe spent time in foster care, often sometimes they're just not even aware that they may have qualified because it was when they were younger, and the person that they ended up in the custody of or is not even aware or telling them about it. But it waives the tuition and fees for all Texas public vocational colleges or universities. And you could go for, undergrad, graduate school, get your MD, get a PhD. It will cover all of that under the current law. The one big requirement is that you must have enrolled in a course at a state-supported institution before, or a dual credit course before you turn age 25. So this is actually comes up as a barrier a lot, because a lot of these youth have often been through a lot, and it takes them a long time to get to that point where they actually enroll in college. And if they haven't done it before they are 25, then they potentially do not qualify for this under the law. And so it's really helpful if you are working with someone that you try to get them in. It could be a weightlifting class at the community college. Get them into something so they have that credit, they have that on a transcript that they enrolled in a class, and that they can then, when they are in a position where they got their life more under control, when they're ready to make this thing, which I'm sad to say how many young adults who have contacted me when they're in their late 20s and 30s who are like, okay, this is what I've been through and I'm ready to go to college now, and unfortunately they may not qualify for it. So I'm not going to go through this all in great detail, but just other than, because it's kind of tedious, but it covers anybody who was adopted out of foster care after their after September 1st, 2009, or if permanent managing conservatorship, so custody, was granted to a non-parent if it was after September 1st, 2009. And so the reason that date is that's the year the law changed, and that was the date. So before, it used to only cover more youth more that had aged out or certain adopted youth, but this really expanded it. There's also provisions that cover youth who are older, who have been in permanent managing conservatorship and then return to the legal responsibility of a parent, or were in temporary managing conservatorship. And so it's a great thing to encourage youth when if their parents have gotten into a better place and it's possible for that youth to safely go back to that parent, then they can still get their tuition waiver, which a lot of youth are using as a factor when they make that decision. There's a second tuition waiver, which is if anybody was adopted out of foster care and there was an adoption assistance agreement that basically usually it provides like a monthly stipend to the adoptive parent. So it covers more than ongoing Medicaid for the child, and it covers more than the fees to, like, if somebody's adopted from foster care, there's around $1,200 is available to the adoptive family to use to pay for an attorney and court costs and things like that. And so if it's anything more than that, they can get this waiver. And the one difference between this one is that they don't have to use it if it's before their 25th birthday. It's they use it before their 25th birthday. They can use it no matter how old they are when they first started using it. Both of them you can use after your 25th birthday, but this one you don't have to have enrolled in your first class before your 25th birthday. And those that were adopted after September 1st, 2009 and have an adoption assistance agreement have both these waivers, which I guess gives them the benefit that they don't have to start class before they're 25. So if you're working with someone who thinks, oh, maybe I was in foster care, I'm not really sure, this is somebody that I would encourage you to at least contact us, and we can help them find out and see if they qualify for that tuition waiver. And my paralegal, youth specialist Lou Portillo, will help them get that tuition waiver, get a copy of it, and so that they have that to present to the college. There's one other educational benefit, the education and training voucher. This is up to $5,000 per year in expenses related to college that aren't covered by the tuition waiver. So tuition waiver doesn't cover housing. So it includes a lot of stuff. And for youth who are in high school, it can cover, in a dual credit course, it can cover things like books and computers and stuff. The ETV is available to the age of 23. Used to be you had to be using it before you were, by the time you turned 21 to keep using it until 23. That's no longer the law. So up until age 23, there's a 5-year cap on getting these benefits. But this is really can help make education possible for youth to cover their living expenses while they're using that tuition waiver. I'm just going to quickly go over a few more things before we wrap up here. If you're working with anyone who's a vulnerable youth, who's an immigrant, if they don't have a birth certificate, show they were born in the U.S., they really need a document that shows there's that they're certified document that shows that they're a citizen, or what their immigration status is. Of course, if they actually don't have immigration status, then that's another issue that they probably need to see if there's some sort of relief available to them about, and that's something that if you're working with a vulnerable youth, you could refer to us and we can help assess. It can be a really long, complicated process trying to figure out what it is. Unless somebody has a copy of whatever document that they had, it can be very challenging to figure it out. You really need to have someone with some immigration expertise to help them to get information and navigate the process. There's various forms of potential immigration relief. Again, somebody with some immigration expertise really needs to help find out information about their background and help determine what kind of relief they might be available for them. For youth who are in foster care, there's often they often may qualify for special immigrant juvenile status, which is a two-part process that they can adjust to become a lawful permanent resident. But that process can take years now because there's a backlog for youth from certain countries because of limits on visas. And so again, this is something that if you're working with a youth who's in foster care, that you want to make sure CPS is moving on this process quickly, because until that youth adjusts to lawful permanent resident status, they are essentially undocumented. It makes it difficult for them to work or access any sort of benefits or assistance. None of the aged out foster care benefits, other than the tuition waiver, are available to them when we're still undocumented. You may also be working with clients that qualify for a U visa or a T visa, and that's something you may have other resources as well that can help you work with those. But you can contact our project if you're not sure what somebody may qualify for and you need some help trying to assess what kind of relief. And just a very quick overview of SSI. This is the benefit. It's for people who are totally disabled, that to qualify, that they're low income, that they have very limited assets. The disability can be physical, intellectual, or of like a mental health nature. Sometimes youth believe somebody says that they're getting Social Security benefits, and this happens a lot with youth in foster care. Well, sometimes that's because they had a parent who was disabled, so they're getting RSDI, or they have a parent who is deceased and they qualify as a survivor. And so you need to know what kind of benefit is, because that will help determine if they're going to actually continue to get it once they turn 18. Even if they're getting it based on their own disability, they may be asked to reestablish their disability once they become an adult. And if they're getting it because their parent, they're a survivor of a parent, or their parent was disabled, they have to establish they have a disability by while they are still young, to continue to get that benefit and keep that benefit for the rest of their life. And one of the very critical things is a lot of times is that youth, especially when it's a mental health nature, is that they have to have good records and documentation. And so if you have somebody who is out of foster care and is no longer getting treatment and services, often, they're very, they have trouble accessing it, they don't like it, they don't, well, even that, but they're not going to be able to get SSI if they are not able to establish that they are, getting medical care and have the records to show that they have the disability. And that's something that you can talk to our project in more detail about, the youth can talk to us in more detail about. Just keep in mind that guardianships are often not appropriate for a lot of youth. They have to have significant intellectual disabilities or capacity issues. There's something called a supported decision-making agreement, which is a much better thing that they can enter into with someone to help them go to the doctor and discuss things, or handle some of their personal affairs, but it helps them maintain more of their autonomy. And then this is, I'm sure, an issue that you see a lot with vulnerable youth, is that they have criminal and juvenile issues, and it's causing all sorts of problems. They have tickets, they can't get their license because there's a hold because of unresolved criminal matters. Their records, things are coming up when they apply for a job and some of the background check. So just a quick overview. The juvenile justice system covers those who are age 16 and under, unless they're certified as an adult. For like serious crimes, they may be certified as an adult for the adult system. So this is something a lot of youth don't know. So if you're working with youth who are about to turn 17 or 17, you need to let them know you're in the adult system, and it's a lot less forgiving. But Class C misdemeanors are not handled in the juvenile system. They're handled in the JP court or the municipal court. And unresolved Class C misdemeanors and status offenses can turn into warrants, which show up in the adult criminal justice system, and they put on a hold on obtaining a driver's license. They can get arrested, when there's a warrant out there. I've had clients who, get something from when they were 14. They have no idea what it is. They don't even remember, that they lived in Houston because they were only there for 2 weeks when this event happened that led to this piece of paper. In their Class Cs, you often generally aren't even arrested. I mean, it's not like they were put in handcuffs or anything. They may have just been a piece of paper issued and given to the foster care placement or something. And so they may really not understand at all what it's about. And so sometimes just tracking down what the issue is, where it's at, what needs to be done to resolve it. However, there is a presumption of indigence for youth in DFPS conservatorship or classified as homeless. So they cannot be charged fines and fees. And we have been successfully raising this even when they are, several years later. But if at that time they fit that category, the way the law is worded, and there's some other laws about indigency, that we have helped many youth and young adults get charges reduced, and so this is not the fines eliminated, so this is not hanging over them, and they are not facing possible arrest, and they can get their driver's license, and so this is something that we encourage you to refer youth to us for assistance with. In the adult criminal justice system, if they can't afford an attorney, they're entitled to court-appointed attorneys if it's felony Class A and Class B, but not for Class C misdemeanors. So that if they are facing a criminal charge, they should be requesting a court that's above a Class C. They should be requesting a court-appointed attorney. They should say, I can't afford an attorney. They should not say, oh, I think maybe my aunt will help me get an attorney. They need to fill out the form showing that they're indigent and request that court-appointed attorney from the very start of the case. When they go before the magistrate, and keep saying they want a court-appointed attorney. We help with sealing juvenile records, and we will assess and see what can be done about expunging or non-disclosure of adult criminal records. The adult criminal records never go away and are pretty accessible unless you do an expunction or non-disclosure. There are a lot of the law about juvenile and adult non-disclosures and expunctions is very complicated. It's very fact specific, and so we really need the youth to apply, and we need to get as much information as we can for them, and have them get their criminal history and possibly get court records to figure out exactly what is on their record and what would be available to them to help get it off the record. And so it quits being a barrier that keeps coming up in their history. And that's our project contact information. So I'm happy to take questions. Hope I didn't talk too fast.
Thanks so much, Christine. That was a lot of information, and so thankful to have experts like you at the Foster Youth Justice Project, so that all of our partners on the line don't have to be experts in each of these areas. They have somebody that they can lean on. We are right at the end of the hour, so I understand if folks need to hop off, we'll have a recording that we'll send. We're going to take just a couple minutes here, so we might run over just a bit to make sure we address any questions. We had a couple that came in through the chat box, and you can still type that in if you have one last question there. And I apologize to Tiffany on the line. Raise your hand, Tiffany, if I misrepresent your question, and we can unmute you to ask it. But it looks like maybe she works with an adoption agency, and she was wondering if you had any advice, on how someone in her position could help get out information about that tuition waiver that you talked about. If any youth that are adopted are eligible for that, how they can help them take advantage of that opportunity.
So with the tuition waiver, on our webpage, there is a handout about the tuition waiver, and it has information about how to contact the adoption specialists, and then they can contact our project. And so I would encourage giving that to youth, giving it to their adoptive families, and sometimes just helping them when if they call back later on and we're like, where was it? What is it? It's, helping them figure out who to call to request that waiver. And people can always be referred to us as well. And we can explain the process, to them, and either help them, give them guidance about how to connect directly with the right person, or we can open a case and help them get a copy of that waiver.
Great. See a couple of people asking if this will be offered again, so that's nice. They found it helpful. Not through us. I'm not sure if the Foster Youth Justice Project has other webinars planned, but like I said, we will have this particular training recorded and available through a link that we'll send out to folks. Do y'all have other training opportunities that y'all do, Mary Christine?
So generally it's when, somebody invites us to present at a conference or something they're doing. I guess we don't formally offer our own training. I guess it's something to think about. So if we decide to start doing that, we'll put information on our webpage about that.
Perfect. And I was curious, earlier you mentioned a lot of the great resources that are embedded into different systems, liaisons and the ombudsman and that sort of thing. One of the ones you mentioned was the district liaison in the schools for foster care. And we've heard feedback from some folks locally that their district foster care liaison isn't there, or maybe it hasn't been updated in the list that's available statewide. Do you have any suggestions for folks trying to engage with a district when they're not really sure who that person might be, or if they have a person in their district? Or is that an issue you've run into at all?
So one thing is that they can contact the DFPS regional education specialist for that region of the state where that district is located. And then they could ask them, do they know who the liaison is? There's also the TEA office that oversees the foster youth and some of the other highly mobile populations that they work with, and you can contact them to see if they have some guidance. And there is one person whose name is escaping me at the moment, but I know she's the person that's kind of oversees some of the work that the TEA does on the issue. And if that person wants, if whoever's asking this question, if you want to email me, I can help connect you to those particular resources.
Yeah, and I don't know if the person you're talking about is Kelly by chance, but that same division at TEA that does the at-risk and highly mobile populations, they're the same division that addresses a lot of the child abuse and trafficking issues for schools. And so I know if you check out that section of the TEA website, they've actually released some resources recently for districts looking to train their staff on trafficking or to provide some prevention education to students. So that might be helpful for folks to know that that division is over both of these.
Yeah, Kelly is the supervisor, or the person I'm thinking of. Their name starts with an L, and she used to be a DFPS regional education specialist. But just feel free to email us at info@texasfosteryouth.org, and I can find their contact information.
Perfect. I am not seeing any more questions that came through the question box here, and we're just a couple minutes over. So I think it'll be a good chance to wrap up here. I just want to thank you again so much for being with us and sharing all of this helpful information and for allowing us to record it and share it with folks afterwards. Want to encourage all of you on the line to keep an eye on your inbox. If you've joined the webinar, you should be getting updates about future training opportunities from our office on issues related to sexual exploitation of youth, and we hope that you'll join us next time. Thanks again, Mary Christine.
Oh, thank you.
Bye, everyone.